I am a 22 years old female, have an older sister, 25 years old. My sister is very sensitive about everything. When we were young, if I made the smallest comment like, I prefer pink over blue, it would make her cry because she thought I was aiming at her by saying it. My parents would always ask me to apologize to her since she's sensitive and I'm emotionally stronger than her. My parents never controlled my sister's diet growing up, letting her have what she wants since they found it too difficult to control her. I was skinny as a stick when I was a kid. So even though my family has a long history of thyroid disease, my parents didn't think there was an issue with me. However, my sister has been overweight the majority of her life, so my parents thought she'd be the one with the thyroid issues. They took us to an endocrinologist when I was 10. I got a diagnosis for Hashimoto's thyroiditis while my sister didn't, and instead got told to exercise and watch her diet. I got hypothyroidism due to Hashimoto's, and have been on medication ever since. My sister and I moved back in with our parents due to what's happening these days. I leave my medication in a cabinet near the kitchen since I know I won't take it unless I have to actually get out of bed to do so. Apparently, I left a box before I moved out of my parents' house when I was a teen, and one of her friends saw it while they were over and asked if it was hers. My sister told them that it was, and that's why she was overweight. The box has Euthyrox written on it in big bold letters with a little picture of a thyroid gland next to it. So, yeah, pretty obvious it was meant for a thyroid condition. She's held up this farce for almost 4 years. I only figured it out when I saw her take a box of it out of my bag one day. I confront her on it, and she starts crying and telling me that she just didn't want anyone to mean to her because she's fat. She also says that it's not fair that the one with the normal weight gets the thyroid disease. I tell her to knock it off, and that she can't lie to get sympathy from people. My parents talk to me later, and they say that I was too harsh calling her a liar and she probably needs a therapist or something, and the classic, I should apologize since I'm more mature. They even tell me that they were hoping that she was the one with the thyroid issues as a child, so that they could justify her weight gain. I ask them, so you wanted your daughter to be sick instead of admitting that it's your fault because you bought her McDonald's whenever she wanted it, and never made her exercise? Now they're mad at me too. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times, and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem, and though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me he had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night. because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words girlfriend or love of my life were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc. would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. Two things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single, and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple, and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action. Seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer, or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days, and his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life, truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. My cousin turned 18 recently. She's in high school. She doesn't have a car, and during her birthday weekend, thought her parents were going to buy her one. They didn't get her one and she was pretty upset. I should note that I'm not very close with my cousin, or the rest of my extended family for that matter. I only heard about this through the grapevine from my dad. Anyway, my cousin texts me on the Friday before her birthday asking if she can take my car. I just leased a new Ford Escape, to the mall and then for an out-of-town road trip with her friends over the weekend. I tell her no. She begs and pleads with me. I tell her no again. My car is for me to drive and for me only. If she wants her own car, she can save up and buy one. She calls me and says that I ruined her birthday and that she's embarrassed because her friends think she got a car for her birthday and she doesn't have one. I don't respond to her and think nothing of it. The weekend comes and I sleep in very late on that Saturday, waking up at 1 p.m. Don't judge. Even though my car is parked in my driveway and my gate is closed, I come to realize that someone egged and TP'd my car. With many, many eggs and 5 to 6 rolls of TP. And since the weather was warm outside, the raw egg baked into my car, along with the dried up toilet paper, destroying the paint. Since I have security cameras around my house, I decide to go back and watch. At around 9:30ish that morning, I see my cousin and a bunch of her stupid friends vandalizing my car. I'm surprised she didn't smash the windows and poke holes in the tires too. I press charges and my cousin is in legal trouble. Her and her parents are pissed off at me for pressing charges, her parents telling me that she's just a kid, and that she's been through a lot of emotional stress doing virtual schooling for this past year and that I should take that into consideration, and that I should be ashamed of myself for pressing legal charges against my baby cousin. That I'm almost 30 and don't I remember what I was like at that age? I do remember, and I wasn't stupid enough to egg anyone's car. And can't she work something out with me like doing chores around my house for money if I drop the charges, that she's young, that she doesn't need a felony on her record, etc., and that it was just a prank. Right after I pressed charges, my cousin was calling and texting me over and over saying that this could have been avoided had I let her take my car. I need to add that my cousin already has a felony on her record, a DUI. She's not remorseful of anything. Also, my aunt and uncle will not pay me for the damages. They just want me to drop the charges and pay for everything myself like nothing happened. I am a 28 years old female, and I do babysitting on the weekends to make extra cash. There is one family I definitely should have phased out by now, but the kids are cute and if I don't have another job, it's easy money. My issue is, the mom is never home on time. She used to not give me return times, but finally I started asking as it made it impossible to get anything done on the weekends. I'd go babysit so she could go to brunch, but she'd be gone from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. My whole day was gone. After that, she'd start giving me times but never stick to them. She wouldn't even call to tell me, she'd just stay out. On Saturday, I got to her house at 6 and she was supposed to be home by 9. I told her she needed to be on time because I had plans to go out with friends. I was even getting ready at their house after I put the kids to bed. She promised. Of course, 9 o'clock rolls around and she's not home. I call her, no response. Text, no response. Another hour. Nothing. Still calling and texting. Finally, it is midnight. By this point, my plans are long ruined but I'm pissed and exhausted. I call her and leave a voicemail saying if she's not home in the next hour, I'm considering the kids abandoned and calling the cops. I also text her this. I try calling her 30 minutes later and it goes to voicemail on the second ring. I text her again and she leaves me on read. If she had reached out saying, hey, I'm staying out until X time, I would have stayed. I don't know any of her family nor the father of the kids, so I can't call them. I gave her a grace period of 15 minutes and tried calling again, finally called the cops, non-emergency line. They showed up and I showed our agreement in text from earlier in the week confirming that she'd be home by 9. They tried contacting her, didn't answer. I was dismissed and they took the children to the police station. I go home and go to bed. I am awoken at 3 a.m. by a frantic call. It's her. Where are the kids? Why am I not here? I tell her I followed through on my threat, check the police station. She cursed me out, I hung up and went to bed. The next day, She sends me an essay saying the kid's father was called and there's a DCF investigation launched against her. She called me every name under the sun, but I didn't think I was wrong until I spoke to a friend with kids. She said I should have just waited it out and refused to ever sit for her again. She asked if her potentially losing her kids was worth me being petty.